Hi, I'm Congressman Steve King, and sometime last year I drafted a bill called the Heartbeat Bill, the Heartbeat Protection Act, H.R. 490. And what it does is it protects a baby from the time a heartbeat can be detected, the baby is protected. We went to work here in the House of Representatives, and due to a good whip team and a lot of knowledge base and deep convictions, we got to 170 co-sponsors and 162 national outside organizations or leaders that have signed on to this bill. We came further and faster with a bill that does more than any pro-life legislation that's been brought along this path since Roe v. Wade in 1973. But we hit a roadblock, and the roadblock was that I think that the previous speaker planted this into kind of a verbal rule, which is they won't bring a pro-life legislation to the floor of the House unless it has the support of the top 3 pro-life organizations in the country. Those top 3 pro-life organizations include Family Research Council, Tony Perkins, they're on board. Susan B. Anthony List, they're on board. But the other organization, National Right to Life, the oldest and the largest, refuses to support the bill, and they say we do not oppose it, but they actually refuse to support it, and now they've been working against it. So we tried another tactic, which was there's some of the complaints, and they actually came out of National Right to Life also. You need to kind of earn your stripes and pass the bill in the states, a few places, before you actually qualify to move up to the big leagues of the United States Congress. Well, I'm in my 16th year here, and I think I know a little bit about that, and I don't agree with them. But we sent the bill to Iowa and asked them what they could do in the Iowa Senate. And the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Brad Zahn, said, I'm going to move this bill. It's a good bill. We need to do it. We need to save these innocent lives. And he assigned it to the right people, Senator Amy Sinclair, for example, and they moved that through the state Senate on 24 minutes of debate on the floor of the state Senate, where it was then passed over to the Iowa House, and it was a little more difficult. Now, the votes weren't there just automatically like they seemed to be in the Iowa Senate, but we answered every objection. The objections coming up sounded strangely like the objections we've been hearing here in Washington that had been presented by National Right to Life. And that's Carol Tobias, and that's David Osteen, and it's others. And I've tried to sit down and talk reason with them. I haven't been able to meet face-to-face with either one of them, as important as this is. I happen to be also the chairman of the Constitution Committee here in Congress, so who is more important for them to ever talk to in this Congress if you're concerned about constitutional issues than the chairman of that committee? In any case, I noticed the resistance that was being pushed back, and the people that didn't support the bill here in the House that say they are pro-life were saying to me the kind of arguments I got over the phone from the leaders of National Right to Life. And then, as we took the bill to Iowa, and I spent a couple of weeks there helping to bring those votes together in the Iowa House, I started hearing the same arguments that National Right to Life had been making. So I looked back and said, what's the origin of this? Well, I found it back clear as far back as December 13th, 2011, when there was testimony before the Ohio State Legislature on their heartbeat bill. Their National Right to Life, through their state affiliate, opposed the heartbeat bill. And they lobbied against it right alongside Planned Parenthood. And then just last year, when the heartbeat bill passed out of the Ohio legislature and it went to Governor John Kasich's desk, who's there to lobby for him to veto the bill? National Right to Life, at least through their state affiliate at a minimum. These things are recurring over and over again. The arguments made in that testimony December 13th of 2011 are the same arguments they're making today. They're saying, we can't challenge the Supreme Court because if we do, Kennedy will vote against life and Ginsburg will write the majority opinion and she'll take away all the things that we have gained. Well, there are only about 6 or 7 countries in the world with a more pro-abortion policy than the United States of America. How in the world could we anticipate that a Supreme Court would take those rights away from us, those things that we have done marginally to save lives? And by the way, I've been for every pro-life piece of legislation that's ever come down the pipe, and I've had my hands and my fingerprints on the ban on partial birth abortion. I got to work really inside the shop on that one. So I've been engaged in this for a long time. I want to compliment the Iowa legislature, the Senate, and now the House. Night before last, they had a hearing, and that hearing lasted about an hour and a half. And there they brought witnesses on both sides of the argument. stellar witnesses on the pro-life side. People like Tom DeLay, former Majority Leader in the United States Senate. Dr. Kathy Altman, who was a witness before the hearing that I held last November 1st on the heartbeat bill here in Congress. A good number of others. Sue Thayer, who has sued Planned Parenthood for their pro-abortion agenda and the fraud and corruption that they are part of. And you would think that if you were writing an article, the founder of Life News, if you were Stephen Ertelt, who put this document out, you would think you would notice that Tom DeLay testified there. You might notice what Kathy Altman actually said. You might notice that they were stellar witnesses on the side of life. Seems as though, though, he picked out a few of the things that had a little less impact and put them in his story. Now, this is what happens when you get people that are in the business to do the business of running an organization whose principle seems to be about business rather than about saving lives. And I read their mission statement at National Right to Life. I mean, it says that they're there to protect life from the beginning of life to natural death. The beginning of life is defined a little later on their website as the moment of fertilization. That's where I am. Life begins at conception. But they don't follow through on that. They refuse to be involved in anything that challenges the precedents of the Supreme Court. In fact, they put out misinformation that says that we have been defeated on the heartbeat bill at the 8th Circuit Court level because of North Dakota and Arkansas's heartbeat bills that were struck down by the 8th Circuit, as if we can't ever get past the lower court to challenge the Supreme Court, and they refuse to challenge the Supreme Court anyway. And it is legal malpractice to tell the public that we are defeated at the lower court level and therefore we can't achieve an accomplishment of restoring this protection for life, which actually is in the 14th Amendment in the Constitution. And the reason it's legal malpractice is because everybody out there needs to know, every lawyer in America does know, that if there's a Supreme Court precedent, you can't get a lower court. It's not going to overturn the United States Supreme Court. You will lose at every level. You've got to work your way up to the Supreme Court in order to overturn those decisions. We did that with partial birth abortion. 3 federal circuits struck down our law banning partial birth abortion. We still made it an appeal to the Supreme Court. The same court heard that case, and the same court reversed its position because we had crafted the law in an appropriate way. I wrote the heartbeat bill to challenge the viability standards in the United States Supreme Court. The National Right to Life, and even through their state affiliates and through their Life News people like Stephen Ertelt, are attempting to block this legislation that's on the cusp of going to the governor's desk. And why are they doing that? They refuse to challenge the Supreme Court. And if you're willing to take that stand with them, then you also need to be willing to accept the burden of guilt that comes along with accepting 1 million abortions a year in perpetuity in the United States of America. That's what they have embraced. They're protecting Supreme Court decisions, and they're pushing back on legislation that needs to get to the Supreme Court, because I wrote the bill not for the configuration and the makeup of this Supreme Court, but I wrote it for the next appointment of the Supreme Court, the one that follows Gorsuch, which means we need to move these things now to get them to that court. And to conclude this, there need to be 4 windows open in order to get a national bill to the Supreme Court. First one is a pro-life majority in the House of Representatives. It's here. We need to get it to the floor. The second is a pro-life majority in the United States Senate. 51 pro-life votes demonstrated that on the 20-week bill here just a few weeks ago. The next one is a president that will sign it. President Trump will sign the heartbeat bill. Mike Pence will be standing next to him when that happens. That means getting it to the Supreme Court in about 1.5 years is about as early as we can hope for. Now, who thinks that there won't be another appointment to the Supreme Court before then, and especially with the rumors that Justice Kennedy is ready to retire. Justice Ginsburg's 84, Justice Kennedy is 80, and Justice Breyer is 78 years old, and then you go all the way down to Spring Chicken Justice Thomas, who's 68. And so, we must get this moved. It's commanded to us to do this. And wherever National Right to Life is, they need to get out of the way. They refuse to lead. They refuse to follow. Their only alternative now is to get out of the way. Carol Tobias, David Osteen, pick up the phone, call Speaker Paul Ryan, and tell him you no longer want to be considered among the holy trinity of pro-life organizations, because you aren't. And we need to have a different rule here in the House of Representatives. The people need to rule, and they will. and of the allegations that your organization has made towards me, that somehow I've got a personal grudge against National Right to Life, I've not only seen your face once, Carol, I've never seen the face of David Osteen. It's not personal. You're a barrier to protecting lives in America. Come on board. I'd love to give you some of the credit. It's lead, follower, get out of the way, because I'm going to go over, under, around, or through anything that's in the way of saving millions of lives in America.